marks the beginning of the annual Zulu Reed Dance. Girls and young women can participate, but only if they subject themselves to virginity testing. They're then issued with a certificate, including a grading system. While many see this as a celebration of Zulu culture, others believe it exploits young women. Let's get both sides of the story about this this morning. Scholar and gender activist Pilele Ntuli and cultural activist Kozolini Sithole join me in studio this morning. Good morning and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Kozolini, let's start with you to explain very briefly the origins of the Reed Dance and virginity testing and why it's necessary.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's very important that we have this virginity testing. One is to protect the young maidens so they cannot be people who are not into a system where the young people of today, you know, they just do anyway and anyhow by the young boys, especially now as we have all this kind of sickness that we have, and we have the early pregnancy, which it does protect all of that. So it's very important that we have to do, and the pride of the young person, and the pride, and to learn to be a lady, what is to be a girl, what is to be a mama, what are the processes, because we have all those kind of teachings, which those women, they do teach the young people to prepare themselves when they get into that stage to be married, what did they have to look after.
Is virginity testing necessary in that process that you are explaining? Because I'm just reading some stories and some stories of women who say they feel utterly violated, they feel very exploited by the actual process. There's no scientific science behind virginity testing.
No. Actually there, sister, you must understand, it's nothing that they don't even touch the private part of the lady. So I don't know where that comes from. You know, because what did they have to do? They have to look, is their eyes, and then there are signs, you know, which they can able to just see whether she's still a virgin or not. It's not to say it's something which they have to take and put there to make sure whether she's still a virgin or not. They can see by the signs of the virgin.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Pilele about this. And Pilele, I don't know if you've read the same stories I have, and accounts of women who talk about being handled, you know, vaginas being opened and water being inserted or liquids. Have you heard these stories? And virginity testing on its own, I mean, is it something in your opinion that is necessary in any culture?
Well, I think let's start with the reasons my brother gives for virginity testing, which is protection, pride, and I guess the continuation of culture via this practice. Now, the question you are asking is, are there other ways that we can instill pride in African people, protect women and men, and continue culture? And obviously there are. And the main reason or the main reference we have for this is that when this virginity testing and Reed dancing was reintroduced, it was reintroduced in the early 1980s, after 150 years since Shaka had stopped it, because it was attracting a lot of attention to the Zulu nation. So you have a period of 150 years where this is not practiced. That's more than a century. Now, if you're going to reintroduce it and say it's because of pride, how were these people finding their sense of pride in 150 years? So if the idea is you are continuing a culture, what happened to this culture in 150 years? So that's the one point I want to make.
But the idea of virginity testing itself.
And then the idea of virginity testing. So you have a man who's never been virginity tested, I'm assuming, saying that nobody touches people's vaginas. And you have women. I'm a Zulu woman. I come from a place called KwaMaphumulo. And my mother also comes from Estumbini. So I have an intimate knowledge of what happens. So when you have women, multiple women, saying, no, they do touch our vaginas.
Describing the same thing.
Describing the very same thing. And you have a man saying, no, actually, that doesn't happen. Who do you believe? Now, these women are saying that we are violated. And nobody is listening because this practice is patriarchal in nature. But more than that, the scientific rationale for it is absurd, because we know that hymens, the test itself is you go into the vagina and you look for a hymen, and sometimes the woman put a finger there to see if they can feel the hymen. Now the question is, I mean, what happens to women who have broken their hymen through sports and other means, scientifically? Then what are you saying about them?
About that particular person?
Secondly, you have women and girls who have been victims of sexual violence and sexual assault. What then are you saying about, I mean, I'm really sincerely asking you this question.
I would also, I'd like a response from about that.
What do we say for these girls? Now, the third point I also want to ask is, the age of consent in South Africa is 16. So anyone under 16 should not be sexually active. When you have 16-year-olds expressing the fact that they haven't broken the law, what exactly are you saying? Are you saying that those girls who are under 16 and are not there and are not virgins, what are you saying about those girls who are not there? At the same time, what are you saying about the girls who are under 16 who are there exhibiting their virginity?
Rosalini, would you like to respond?
Oh, yes. What has been happening, especially if I can just start here in Johannesburg or in Gauteng, we started this in 90s when I had Mama called Thembi Sibisi. Because I'm from Engutu, where I grown up emceeing. We have this thing where this is culture. This is a way of protecting actually boys and girls. We never actually have this, what is happening today, where you'll find the girls maybe being raped. Something which is called rape in our culture is not there. You know, it's
I find that a bit difficult to understand, because how could you say that rape didn't happen? Rape has been happening for centuries in any culture.
Oh, no, my sister. No,
help me understand.
Perhaps let me ask the question differently. What is rape?
Rape is when a man is sleep with you, forcing you to sleep with him.
And you're saying African men have never slept with women by force?
Oh, no. You cannot.
So what's the practice of ukutwala, which is an ancient practice, and it is incredibly violating to young women?
Okay, let's let him explain, Pilile, about his interpretation of it.
You see, ukutwala is something which it doesn't happen all over. When you twala a person, you twala a person because maybe she was your girlfriend, and then now because she have to maybe appoint another man, and then you think, oh, because now she have to leave me, I must now twala her. Some other ladies, they will do that purposely to say, okay, I'm going to say I don't love him anymore because he's delaying my time instead of taking me. Remember, you only have to say yes once in Zulu to the boyfriend. Once. Once.
Okay.
You cannot say...
I just want to bring this back to the discussion we are having. It's about virginity testing and whether you think it is necessary in this as a cultural practice. Is it something that has to be done? Why aren't boys put through a similar kind of test? And why the stigma attached to virginity tests? Is there no other way to educate women and grow them to be women as they should be in the culture?
Sister, the testing is to make sure that a lady, she must say to you as a boy, hey, you don't touch me, because she knows that the great mamas, they're going to check on her. That's point number one. That is to make sure. It's like when you go to school. But
what education is there for boys to say, don't force yourself on girls, or this is what you should do?
For boys, for me, example, I've grown up, being Ingwele. Ingwele is someone who guides the boys. We always give them the law and say, guys, you cannot sleep with a girl, or cannot force to sleep with a girl. Make sure that she have to say yes to you.
But the world is changing, and I'm sure Pilile would also like to know, the world is changing. Things are different. Like you say, children younger than 10, babies are being raped. They are being violated. Is it not time to maybe relook at certain cultural practices and see that they might not work in 2018 going forward?
I think, Mama, how then you're going to see that she's been raped if this practice you said no? Because that is another reason again. Because people of today, these photos you see when you go around in town, you see DVDs which they were not seen before. Wrong DVDs, sister, where you see a private of the woman or a private of the man has been exposed in tables around in town. People that are selling it, all right? So we say, if you are going to teach this, if you're going to sell this, going to expose this to people, then you are making sure that people, they have to be attempted to want
well, I
to
think
do
that's
this.
a whole other discussion. I'd like to give you the last word, Pilele, before we have to wrap up. I mean, just in terms of educating our women and also just how we maybe need to be mindful, respect cultures, but also look ahead to how times are changing and what needs to be done for girls and women.
I think we have to accept that customs are not set in stone. They change as times change. So who we are today is not who we were yesterday, and it's not who we will be tomorrow. But what we need is to look back at our past and use those tools and use those historical facts to reshape our future and to take customs that are not necessarily applicable in the present time is not sincerely to move our nation and our people forward, because these customs, when you look at them objectively, they no longer apply to the present time.
I think you guys can have this discussion. We are out of time for this particular talk, and we probably would have needed more time. It's a half an hour for this. But thank you very much for your time. It's nice to hear two sides of it and understand what some people believe is, needs to be done and what, in the bigger picture, actually needs to be done. Thank you very much.